Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
So today on the Practical Preservation Podcast, I have Nedra Deadwyler with me from the Save Your Spaces conference. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. I appreciate the offering.
You're welcome. So tell me about your background.
Yeah, so I think the most relevant part of my background really is the fact that I am a native Georgian, and I think there's just been a lifelong pursuit to find history that I identify with, and that also has a bit of laying more information out of my family's history and heritage here, from Northeast Georgia, Middle Georgia, and just the Black experience in general.
Right.
So my education has been a social worker. So we have a BSW, have an MSW. I'm an LMSW, and recently graduated from Georgia State with a master's heritage preservation with a focus on public history, oral history. Dr. Cliff Kuhn, I met him kind of when I was organizing doing public history type tours early on. I met Dr. Cliff Kuhn, and that is why I went back to school to get a master's in heritage preservation. But I'm person-centered, human-centered experiences, being a social worker,
right.
Working,
that makes sense.
Working primarily direct service. So I think I will say too, as I've been reading and learning more about different heritages, I do have rural experiences within my family background, meaning farmers, and
right.
And so just learning more about the Black food systems that exist, cooperatives, et cetera, that these forms of communities, sustainability practices, sovereignty practices is just something that's also synonymous with the Black experience, which also encapsulate a bit of my own personal heritage. So
I think that's very interesting. I read a book. I know it's downstairs on my bookshelf. It's I think it's The History of Black Business in America, Part 1. I don't know if there's a Part 2. I needed something in that for a research that I was doing. So I don't know if there's a Part 2, but it was called Part 1. But they talked a lot about farming even as enslaved people, and selling their produce and using those proceeds. And I thought, besides, having more food to sustain their families. And it talked a lot about the entrepreneurial spirit. And I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of history there that's not always highlighted. I think that's great to highlight that. I've heard a couple of NPR stories too about rural farming and how the USDA really discriminated against rural farmers and didn't allow them to get some of the subsidies and loans that they were allowing the white farmers, and that made a very uneven playing field. So I don't have a ton of interest or background in that, but it's interesting to me when I hear those stories.
Right. I mean, I don't have a ton of, I guess, background in it either, but even just like you're saying, even just a superficial looking a little bit beneath the surface, you find those like discriminatory practices that were inherently a part of the U.S. government, part of U.S. structure, economically, going back to enslavement. But then to even look at some of the great thinkers, W. Du Bois, Booker T, Washington, Carver, like all these people had ideas about and knowledge that had been passed down to them from, their elders too, around municipal practices with plants, understanding ecology, understanding the land. And so, I mean, a lot of sustainability when it comes to food justice, like these things are very much a part of our conversation today, but it's because of terminology, that has changed some. And so now we say food justice, but like food justice, have food justice in order to be alive today. So it's real interesting. I think being a part of, I guess, in preservation also in heritage cultural work, and just seeing how we think about like the world today, and that some of these things just it's a continuation of it's not new, but we've got to begin to even frame it that way so that we can even see ourselves in these movements. We can see ourselves and ingenuity as being a part of these experiences. That's just, again, it's just nothing new.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And when you mentioned Booker T. Washington, I last summer when we were flying, I read a book called The Hidden History of Home Economics. And it was about his wife running the home economics department at Tuskegee, and how that was a way for women until the 50s when men took it over and decided that it was just to make homemakers. It was a way for women to study hard science, engineering and making things. So what they were calling it home economics, but it really was, a way for women to kind of go under the radar and study in the programs that they wouldn't necessarily be admitted into. So it was really an interesting book, but they highlighted a lot of that history, that agricultural history, and also that there was at a time there was a segregated part of the FFA, the Future Farmers of America, and that all of those records are now with the main FFA. So I thought it was really interesting. So so the things that I think are interesting that like I don't have a lot of other people to talk to, so I'm glad I get to talk to you. So I know you came from a social work background. So what drew you into preservation?
What drew me into preservation was the fact that I had left Georgia. I moved to New York City, and I have also lived in Seattle, Washington. So I lived in two other cities where, honestly, when I left Georgia, I was like, I'm leaving the South, never coming back. But I also wanted just a different lifestyle. I was tired of being cooped up in a car, as much as it was this thing of liberation and feeling like, yes, I own the world. I can go wherever I want to, when I want to, in my car. Someone hit me on the way to work, and that was the end of my freedom. Sense of safety. And when I moved to New York, I was like, I can go anywhere on my own feet. I can go anywhere with my own power by riding a bicycle. There's adequate public transportation, mass transportation, busing, and taking the train. Same thing in Seattle. So I just learned something that was also, it was benefiting me not only in terms of mobility, but also in terms of mental health. Like I felt better. I was more stimulated by my environment. I also felt connected to my environment because I went places I probably wouldn't have gone in a car. And I met people along the way. And it just changed my life and lifestyle by doing things that way. And also coming from the South, growing up primarily in Metro Atlanta, DeKalb County, I am a Gen Xer. So when I was growing up, I bused to school. And I also lived in segregated space. I lived in primarily a Black neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So I experienced segregation still, and it's de facto at this point as well via economics. And so when I lived in other cities, I didn't know what the boundaries were, so to speak. So I crossed boundaries and I was in different neighborhoods, and it changed my relationship to other people. It wasn't something that I had to do in one place or another, school or at church or some other public space. It could be an intimate setting. So when I came back to the South, came back home to Georgia in 2010, the city, Atlanta, had started to change a lot. It was becoming more diverse, but there were still like these holdouts of segregation. But then I also had a realization that if we don't understand history and place, then we'll never really have proper relationships or understandings of each other. So I started it is a business, Heritage Tours, but I operate it like it's a nonprofit. It's really about building community and building connections, and I wanted to do that around history and place using the tool of a bicycle, which also has all kinds of connotation because of what we in our like modern day culture think about bicycling. It is a democratic tool. Anyone can use it, and all the body uses it, but we have this idealized version of the bicycle. So it's like all these contradictions to like bust up all the contradictions.
I think that's really interesting. Because I do think that I agree with you. I think that we all need to look at our past, but then we also need to see ourselves in those stories. And once you can identify with those, I think that everybody then will feel like they have a stake in the country. And so I definitely I commend your efforts. I think that that's really it's important. It's important work, and it's important work everywhere, not just in the South.
Absolutely, everywhere can benefit from understanding history, thinking about history, seeing themselves part of it.
Well, and I was just going to say, and the thought when I was thinking about not just in the South, the thought ran past my mind that that quote that there's no place more segregated in America than Sunday morning. We don't. It's one thing to be integrated within school systems but to be integrated within the very personal and spiritual and intimate places. I think that's where we need to work, because it's really hard to view people as other if they're part of your family, if they're part of your community, if you see them on a regular basis and know them as people. My dad and I had that argument when Barack Obama was starting to run for president. He's like, he's never going to get elected, and I said, no, I said, America's getting brown. I said, I know it's pretty scary to the old white people, but it's happening.
It's true. I was like your dad there. I was very apprehensive. I didn't even want the first election. I was like, I can't even pay attention to this because I don't get my hopes destroyed. But it was an interesting change to have Barack Obama to be elected as president twice.
And then we had the backlash.
There's that too. But I think it points to the fact that we still don't understand our history and the things that we have to not just undo, but like contemplate it, really find those places and spaces that we have to make adaptations, that we got to heal, that we've got to bring some sort of restitution, that we have to come to terms with and accept as this is what happened. But we can do different. We have the opportunity to create change every day. So as we're in these new rounds of elections, it's just thinking about our budget seasons, thinking about the ways that we can we've got to create change. We got to first understand the history that we come from, that created the environments where we live right now.
Right. And then make the spending decisions that are going to make a lasting, I heard he's actually a preservation economist, talk about the spending that was put out after the recession in 2008. And he's like, we're buying, how did he say it? We're buying Big Macs with $40 mortgages or 40-year-old mortgages. He's like, we need to look at more sustainable spending, the money, it's okay to spend the money, but make sure the money is going to be, longer term than just a meal.
Yeah.
And I think I think there's some of that thought going on, but it's not consistent within our government, either local, state, federal, any level.
Yeah. I think you're right. 100%. I mean, and even I only learned this recently that preservation is funded through like oil and gas tax. So,
oh my goodness.
So in terms of sustainability, finding ways to build our futures on something that's going to really keep us here for the long term, so we can have these artifacts and these materialities that say, hey, we were here.
Yeah, those touch points, because they're prompts to help future generations remember.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So everything's complicated. The world is complicated. So tell me about your Save Your Space conference.
Yeah, Save Your Spaces. So I put
spaces, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Like yours, not save our spaces, it's save your spaces.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the ownership goes to all of us. Like we were saying earlier, this is not something for institutions. It's not something for universities, preservation organizations. This is for the everyday average person who wake up and go to work at the post office, or, drop their kids off at school, or the grandmother who just retired and is doing gardening. It's for everybody.
Right.
The school kid that, whatever, loves art and whatnot. It's for everyone to really get involved and take up some form of action around preservation of stories, of actual physical locations, cleaning out, an elder dies, when you're cleaning out their house, maybe those materialities need to go to an archive. Maybe they should go to a library, or maybe just scan it in, take photos, write something about it, so that like this was a thing that our person that we love and care about owned, and what they did with it, the meaning was. Because once all these things are gone, they're gone. So that was the real impetus, something that I had wanted to do with my other organization, Civil Bikes. It was really hard to do once it had an identity and got pigeonholed as being just tours around civil rights, bike tours, which none of that is accurate anymore. It hasn't been accurate for a long time, but it was hard to have that space for community, to have ownership. And so there were a series, there's probably about 25 people who are professionalized, meaning some, yes, may work for the government, they may work as consultants, but they're doing some form of action around preservation, and be it a physical structures or heritage, culture. And they were sharing with each other, as well as anyone who was in the audience, so that transference of knowledge and skill, and how to navigate to funding, all those things, the average person, and especially communities that have been not centered in history and in preservation, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, immigrant, refugee people, queer people, was who it was designed for. And those were the people who were in positions to talk about it. So it was across the age spectrum, from young to older. Some elders were there. We had different racial backgrounds, and different types of work environments and experiences, to really kind of demystify and break down what is preservation. And yes, also learning the rules, but also you can do things different too.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's making preservation accessible, and realizing that everybody has a story to be recorded.
Mhm.
And I think that's really, really important. That when you said the house clean out, so in Lancaster County is really strange, just in some ways. Like we have a lot of plain people, so we have like Amish and Mennonite and Brethren, and there's like some traditions here that aren't in other places. So we have like auctions, like that you like go to a place and they just auction off like people's household goods. That's what, when people die, that's what they do. And I walk around there. I've been to them a couple times. Like it's not where I hang out, but I've been a couple times, and I just walk through, and I'm like, this is somebody's like entire house, and like it's the accumulation of all their stuff. Like we're just like offering dollars for it.
Wow.
But it's like like you don't think about like that accumulation until like it's right there in front of you, or you're having
Right.
to do that clean out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
yeah.
mhm.
Oh, I was just thinking, and I think it flips flops too between generations. Like if somebody really had to get rid of a lot of stuff, then they like throw stuff away all the time.
Yeah. Yes, it does flip flop. And that responsibility, I will say, I wish when I was younger, I was very much that person. I loved my grandparents' stuff, like be it in my imagination, playing with the old
Oh yeah.
iron, to heat up in the fireplace, and the old lady, not the church lady gloves,
Oh yeah.
and my granddad's fedoras, or just looking at the items on their desk. But like, it was like, I don't think it's just a Southern tradition. I think it's just how we have changed, how kids, what do you want? And they get to like whatever they want to say, and whatever they want to do. That's how things are. But I came up in a time where kids were spoken to, and that's when you were, you kind of had this, it was, we all kind of had in our households, we had a place and whatnot. So I definitely had a lot of respect for my elders. So I didn't go around asking them questions.
Right. Yeah.
But I wish I had been, as I got older, had asked questions and did some of that recording, because listening to their stories, they shared a lot. It was very rich. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
And the artifacts too, they all had these stories, and they had like there was a lot of life that it's really hard to find those depictions. Again, coming out of a Gen Xer through the 90s, there's just also, this like comes out of a search for identity, a search for like some reality.
Yeah.
A lot of depictions of Black people, although my heritage is very diverse. I am a darker skinned or brown skinned woman, and like the depiction of Black people is generally pretty negative. And so finding something that actually reflects me and my experience, or people that I know, it's a journey. It have to be like weave and bob through a lot of propaganda that does not really help even build trust, build relationships, build interracial positive relationships, and create neighborhoods and communities where people can coexist. There's always these assumptions that people are doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe it's understandable, but being a person who might receive some of that is just hard to contend with. So like finding these real stories and happenings, and creating opportunities for people to learn from others, it's a necessary activity that has to be done.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had a couple thoughts when you were talking, but yeah, I think that that we're probably similar age. I might be a little bit older, but they the first probably positive, like even like upper middle class affluent, was the Cosby Show, which is like problematic now. But before that, there was Good Times, or I guess the Jeffersons too, but that was a spinoff. But yet like that was like those, there were just a handful of those shows, and now I think the media is doing a much better job. There's many more ways for kids to feel like they're part of part of the culture. But yeah, I'm biracial. My mom's Black and my dad's white. And I do realize and acknowledge that, like, most people don't realize it. Most white people don't realize it. And so then I do get like passes through life that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And I recognize that and understand that. It's not like it's a big secret, but I also don't lead with it. Yeah. But yeah, when my mom's mom, her family all moved out of the South before she was born. So probably in the 20s. And they moved to Nebraska. And so before she died, all my mom's cousins and everybody came together to have Thanksgiving in Nebraska with her. And people were trying to ask her questions about like segregation, and because they all went to integrated schools because there just wasn't enough people in Nebraska to segregate, but they also weren't allowed at the pool.
Yeah.
And so somebody was asking her about the pool segregation, and she's like, "Oh, we just didn't want to go to the pool." And I'm thinking that's like I'm pretty sure that wasn't true, but that's probably what your parents told you. Like, we're just not interested in swimming.
Oh, yeah, redirection.
Right. Yeah. So, but those stories, because you lose them once somebody is gone, you lose those stories and that history, that rich history of this is where we came from.
And I think too, the regionality of like Black history is also different, similar, and on what neighborhood. So it's like, I think we sometimes it gets like pigeonholed, and this is the only way that it was. But that's part of the problem, is like we only hear certain voices,
right? And
it's not across different spectrums, so socioeconomic regions, etc. Like we have to have a fuller, fuller. Like when we want to.
I think that's really true, because I was watching Hidden Figures with one of my friends who lives here. And I had seen it with my mom. We went to the movie theater to see it, and I really enjoyed it. I said, you and your daughter will love it. Come over, we'll watch it. And we were watching it, and there's the point where they're at somebody's house, one of the ladies' houses, and she said, my friend said, "There's no Black people that live like that." I said, "The Black people in my family did." And and it is, it's because by the time my grandmother's generation, almost all of her siblings went to college, which I didn't realize was unusual until I was in my 30s. Like I didn't realize that it was unusual for women to even graduate from high school, and they were graduating from college. And so that was like, but I didn't realize that was unusual experience. Like that was one of my aha moments, that like everybody doesn't have the same experience I did. And my experience is even coming from a multiracial background is one of privilege. And that was a revelation to me.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I think having a wide variety of experiences and stories really shows the fullness of the history.
Right. And it's similar to my background too. Like I would say, just in my father's family, his father's family had been, so my great grandmother gone to college, my great grandfather gone to college, but on my father's mother's side had not.
Right.
It was like his generation of children had gone to college. So it's, regionally there's difference, even within the family structure or community structure. Right. It's different. There are entrepreneurs on both sides of my family. But that's because there was a time period where that was the only way to survive.
To make a good living. Yeah.
Make a good living, and just to be on the scrapes and violence and all the things that happen when when someone is encased in poverty. Yeah. So and I think like really talking about what happened economically to Black people, that whole Reconstruction, post-Reconstruction, like that history is I think it's kind of it could have been a turning point in where we are today. Yeah. And just going back and reflecting on what was the what laws were put into place and what laws were turned back.
Right.
I mean, because there were people who were making moves from just sitting in positions, but actually becoming leaders, judges, and being in the legislature.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking that they realized very quickly they had to change the voting if they wanted to stay in power. Yeah.
Like it's just about economics.
Yeah.
So I would say, one thing that's really is taking place is that people are rethinking where, like within this economics, whatever life that we are living, what is going to be their experience.
Right.
Is college the economic choice? And,
right.
Back to this cooperative kind of life, like there are a lot of people who are making those transitions, but again, this is still something that's not new. It's something that's a part of cultures that do not have opportunities to have this vibrant life, is just creating mechanisms to
make your own path.
Make your own path. Yeah.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think that, I know when I was in high school, everybody was encouraged to go to college, and it's not for everybody. And you can do well and not have, gone to college. So I think that that's really I think that's an important message to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So I'm curious about the DIY or DIY aspect of Save Your Spaces. So did you have like workshops, or how did you tackle that aspect of it?
Yeah, we did have workshops. Aside from, just having panels and people sharing information and a lot of deep discussions, there were some, put it kind of in an art space, right? Like we did some tie-dyeing, which is also cultural. We had make your own heritage markers. So we know, if people are listening, they know preservation, know historic markers, and kind of signify. But going back to the idea that everyone has a story to tell, why not give it a marker, whether it's in real life, where it's in a virtual space, but being able to say that this was significant and important to me. I think it takes a lot of, it gives back some of the ownership of history and narrative, and also saying that we are all responsible for this.
Right.
So that's part of the DIY. The other aspect was getting involved in some of the organizations that were there. People are taking up like various types of work, joining a project. So I'm not saying there was a call to action and go here, therefore, and do this.
Right.
You can join, you can continue to learn and grow. It was just really, the opportunity was to present, like there are resources that people can take and use. There's an opportunity to think about your own whatever holding down, and then also getting involved. And I will say, like, this was really, I mean, looking back, like it was definitely a kind of a pilot test. If we're going to use some stuff.
Do you think you would do it again next year? Is that your plan? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it's going to take some, what is that, funding, some capital, in order to, I mean, we did that on basically $6,300 was the budget.
That's amazing.
Yeah. To me, putting in money myself. But if it wasn't for my former city council person giving me $3,000 just to support the work, it wouldn't have taken place. So I really appreciate Nedra and Archibald for making that contribution, because the idea had been there, but it needed a bulk of money that I didn't have myself.
Right. Have you looked at the National Trust, any of their grants? They have a couple of grants for telling I can't think of the word I want to use. Undertold stories. That's not the word I wanted.
It's not, but it's something similar.
Yeah.
So we're state certified nonprofit, and I have a fiscal sponsor. Okay. And a lot of grants, you need to be a 501c3.
Oh, yeah.
So that's another process. Yeah. And I will say, like, yes, this is definitely a grassroots organization. I am a social worker, and I kind of feel like that's the space that I feel out in the preservation space because most organizations are disconnected from communities. They're disconnected from these underrepresented communities.
That's the word.
It's intentional. I mean, I don't necessarily like that word, but like that is the word that people understand and they hear. Like, oh, you're talking about like Black people. Yeah, I'm talking about Black people. I'm talking about people of color.
Anybody who hasn't had their story told. Women. Yeah, anybody. Yeah.
There are a lot of folks that fall into that category. A lot of different groups fall into that category. So it's just it is thinking of like, in order to really get there, funding has to change. You know, it can't just be because even to become a 501c3, it's a long process. Right. It takes money, and most groups may not have that or have it at the time. It's very long. It's an even longer process. Yeah. So getting around and navigating these spaces, it takes time. Not everyone's going to go back to college. I went back to graduate school. I'd already had a degree. You know, I didn't really need a grad degree, but it took me a longer time to do it because I have an adult life at this point. But not everyone's going to take that opportunity to go back and to change a career and do all of the work. So how do we get from where we are today to where we want to say we want to be? Right. We've been intentional about not just saying, okay, you've got to meet our standards, but how can we support the work that you're doing? And that's what I will say I need. And I'm sure any other organization that is doing this kind of work probably also needs to. And I'm not a well-funded person, but I've made those personal sacrifices in order to do this because I think it's important and necessary.
Yeah, I agree. So are there ways that our listeners could support you or help support your mission?
I think I would say it's money. Beyond money, I think it is say partnering, inviting us to provide a service for their community, because maybe, and I will say this too, I got into several conversations with people outside of the state of Georgia because they are wanting to do something similar, do work within their own communities. Right. And I like, if it's not something that you do, find someone. And I'm not saying I'm not from every community, but I definitely know how to help build those connections and build a structure around that. I mean, I've demonstrated it in several different ways. And whether it's, so I think it's, contact me and see what are some of the other ways. But I think those are two primary. If collaborations, that's other, basically, those are really the two big.
What trends or challenges do you see in preservation from your vantage point?
Yeah, from my vantage point, I think the biggest trend is that there has been a shift. You mentioned the National Trust. They are giving funding towards and making priorities of underrepresented communities. And I think that is a big trend. I think the other big trend is that people of those communities, they want to be part of that. They want to be included. They don't want to still be talked about by the same type of organizations. They want to be a part of this. And I think
for the conversation, I agree with that.
Part of even leading, and designing and doing things that are culturally specific and relevant. And I say the other trend is that people do want to have spaces where they can talk about their own histories too. So be it spaces where queer people are gathering and talking about their own history and heritages and identities. Black people want that too. Again, it's such a wide, we've only seen very narrow parts of our stories, but talking about it and going through things, colorism and interraciality and, what does it mean to be Black? Still, we're talking about Blackness and identity, anti-Blackness. We have to do that also thinking about history and culture and traditions as well. And immigrant and refugee stories and histories and heritages here in the US, because they also are extensive and long. Right. And some very recent, but still there is like a change in their cultures and their histories. And so I think, there's so many, those are the trends that I kind of keep watch of and thinking of, and I'm mindful of because of who I'm connected to. And I mean, there are plenty of white people in my life that I'm connected to.
Right.
And just even of that story of like white
those stories. Yeah.
I mean, it's like there's such way more diversity of narratives that need to be told, where it's not just white.
Right.
There's all the cultures that have been pulled into whiteness.
Right.
And I really, Dr. Carol Anderson at Emory, who writes a lot about whiteness and white identity, and Nell Painter, both of those historians really do go into, they're two Black women, but they go very deep into whiteness and white identity, white formation, and some of the outputs of those things today. And I just kind of push their expertise together. But I think, if we can explore more of our, like, I would say true selves, truth, and have truth telling.
Right.
And sometimes to begin within our own communities, and we just can't be afraid of complicatedness. And there are, if it's not, I think the Gen X, I think we're really on both sides of this coin. I feel like the kids younger than us are really diverse in terms of their beingness, in terms of their identity, and they are very flexible and comfortable with complications that we probably begin to think of because we haven't had to live in those spaces. They're really good at it. So to have that deference to really allowing them to come into the world in a way where that can be pushed towards towards
No,
so.
the high school age kids, college age kids that I'm around, they amaze me because their worldview, their understanding of things, like even difficult topics, is way bigger than mine was at that age. And I'll tell them that I'm like, I'm telling old, I'm the old lady that's just amazed that you'll talk to me about that. But it is, it's pretty, it's I think that's a testament though to the changes that are happening within the culture, and the openness and the understanding, and so I think those are positive things, and I think that's what some of the divisions that are happening in the country right now are a direct reaction to that, because it's scary to people who don't want the status quo to change.
Right.
And if we look at history, that's typically been the what happens.
It's
a couple steps forward. So what is there anything that you that I didn't think to ask you that you thought about sharing while we were talking?
No, I think my brain is like, but I think I feel like we covered most things, and I would say the last thing that, be it a trend or be it just kind of one of my core values at this point, is linking preservation, linking this work to the everydayness of our life. I mean, it makes it something that it's not complicated, it's not difficult, but it really makes it can make this work, I think more fertile, and also more dynamic, and that people begin to care and pay more attention. And if that's the goal, what is the goal of preservation? I think we always have to ask ourselves that question. What are we preserving? Why are we preserving this? What are our goals and intentions? Because whatever that is, that's what we're going to get. So if we really want people to be participants, I think then
I think that's really important. and when you were talking about like linking preservation to like everydayness, it made me think of, and anybody who listens to the podcast knows that I talk about this book probably at just about every podcast, but there's a book that came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago called Slavery in the North. And he's a political science professor that at Bryn Mawr in outside of Philadelphia. And he didn't realize he was writing a preservation book, but he was talking about collective memory and how if you acknowledge these places that are associated with events are still here, then generations will remember those events. But if you don't, as generations either move away or die, those events get lost. And they don't get remembered because that collective memory doesn't retain it. And I've thought about that a lot, just thinking about like some of the even sites in Lancaster that are going to lose their meaning unless not that the building's going to be gone, but nobody's going to remember because it's not going to be a part of their lives.
Yeah.
So I think, that whole collective memory and having everybody, certain things that everybody remembers or most people remember, I think that's important in preservation. And then it also is the reason why, buildings get preserved, that people remember.
Definitely. Yeah. And I would say one thing that's happening here in Georgia is like, there was a lot of farmland. There was a lot of quote unquote undeveloped, but what's there? And are we taking the time to look to see what's on the ground? Because it wasn't occupied. There is a lot of materiality that we're just bulldozing and building over. And then, go along with that is that once it's developed, it has a whole new narrative. So we don't do a lot of saving with structures here. Right. There are some that are saved, but what are the stories that we're remembering? And for the built environment that we do destroy, what stories are we recording? What are we sharing about that? So that's very important. And and I know there's like a chunk of Georgia that was destroyed during the Civil War, and then so you lost all the early buildings there, but that's all part of the history too. That's part of the history as well. Yeah. But even with that, as we are developing these what have been vacant maybe in the past generation, if we're developing those properties, there's probably artifacts. There's artifacts from enslavement. There's artifacts from what the state of Georgia calls prehistoric, which is Native Americans, our Creek, Muskogee, Cherokee, all different people groups. And those are the big ones, not the smaller ones. They were in the Confederacies. Who are they? What materiality is left and available? Right. And I'm sure if they did archaeological digs, they would find much more. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. How can our listeners contact you? Yeah, an easy way, I will say, since we're talking about Save Your Spaces, info@saveyourspaces.org. That's the email. Save Your Spaces has a website, saveyourspaces.org. You can also email me, Nedra Deadwyler consulting.com at gmail.com. Sorry. Okay, very good. We'll make sure that those are on our website where the podcast is hosted. So if somebody's listening and didn't get a chance to write it down, they can just go and find you there. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed our conversation. Yeah, same here. Thank you, Danielle. It was nice.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.